Hi, my name is Andre Koen. I want to say thank you so much for joining us in this particular session. We're going to talk a little bit about this idea of safe spaces. And so why is it important to create safe spaces? How do we create safe spaces? And we'll provide you with a number of tools to think about how you can do that as a leader, particularly in this organization. And so one of the things we know about this notion of safe spaces is that it is the created environment, right? So if we don't cultivate these safe spaces, they won't naturally happen, right? So as a leader, it's my responsibility to cultivate these opportunities for the creation of safe spaces. And when we talk about safe spaces, what are we talking about? We're talking about places where people feel psychologically, physically, emotionally, politically and religiously safe to be exactly who they are, right? To be able to develop their full potential in these environments. And so one way to think about that, a simple way to think about that, is that safe spaces are places where people can be nurtured along safety, significance, and belonging. Because we're all after very similar things. We're after safety, significance, and belonging. And so safe spaces are those places where one can be assured that you'll be able to not only reach your potential, but you'll be physically, mentally, intellectually safe, psychologically safe to develop to your fullest potential. And so one of the things that we know about the creation of safe space is that it really pivots or hangs on this notion of trust, right? So we have policies and we have procedures. We have people who kind of administer those policies and procedures, and we are trusting that people will do the best they can with aligning behaviors and intentions or holding people accountable to those policies and procedures. And so the first line is this development of trust. Now, the interesting thing about trust is that you can't just say, I trust you. Trust is something that is built over time, that is measured by impact, not by intentions, right? So this notion of trust is the first thing that we have to kind of think about when so how do you build trust in your team? How do you build trust in your work group? How do you build trust with your coworkers? And you do that over time. And so it's important to recognize that the first thing is trust, and that trust comes over time. The other thing to recognize is that something that undermines trust are microaggressions. We'll spend a whole section talking about microaggressions, but they are those small things that whittle. It is like death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? It's those little things that whittle away at trust. It's the snide comments. It's the jokes. It's the cynical approach to either a patient, a coworker, or an administrator, right? So it's all of the cynical nature that gets transmitted or communicated through these microaggressions. And so as a leader, I want to diminish microaggressions, diminish that cynicism by building trust, but also I think it's also important to recognize good behavior. So as a leader, it is my responsibility to reward and recognize good behavior as I create this environment of safety, right? And so it's important to recognize that. It also is important to recognize that so how will I know? I'm a leader. How will I know that I have created a safe environment, that I've created a safe space for people to get their safety, significance, and belonging? How will I know that? Well, one clue that you will have is that people will be willing to take risks, and they will be willing to take risks that may actually lead them to a failure, right? So if you're a leader, an administrator, one of the signs of your leadership or your skill building in this particular area of safe spaces is how willing are people to take risk, and how willing are people to fail. And if they are not able to take risk or don't feel comfortable taking risk, and don't feel that failure is a learning opportunity, one might go back to the group and say, let's think about the culture that we've created where people don't feel like they're safe to take a risk, or to think of failure as a learning opportunity. And so as we wind up this particular portion, I want you to think about those things, that safe spaces are spaces where people can get their safety, significance, and belonging needs met, both on a psychological level, or physical level, or interpersonal relationship level, as well as recognizing that people need to get positive feedback, that an undermining of trust comes in the form of microaggressions, and a litmus test for your work unit is, in fact, people's ability to take risks and to use failure as a learning opportunity. And so I'm going to end this session here. Please look at the rest of the resources that are available to you, and we'll see you in the next session. Thanks.